Hello. I'm going to make a small watercolor and let's see. What are we going to do? First, I'm going to draw some simple geometric shapes. So I'm working very lightly so that the pencil lines aren't too obvious when I'm finished. And I would say as usual, because most of the time I'm thinking of the landscape as I'm making these, so it's kind of a point of reference. So I often have like something like a ground plane, something that might act as a sky. And here I'm thinking of a mountain. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how complicated I want to make this, or if I want to keep it simple today. All right, so very loosely, this is what I'm thinking of right now. The ground plane I mentioned in the sky. This allows me to work with a few different colors in the ground, maybe like a grass color, maybe something like under the ground, and then some rock, and then maybe some trees here. So loosely kind of what I'm thinking about. So to begin, I need to moisten the watercolors. You don't have to do this, but it makes them a lot easier to use as you're working. Because these are dried pans, they're called. And so adding some water allows me to pick up the paint a lot more quickly as I'm working. All right, so I'm gonna start with a sky color. Let's see, what do I want to use today? I'm making sure I get off all the excess water off the brush. And let's start with some cerulean. It's my lighter blue. And I'm going to add just a tiny bit. I'm picking up some burnt sienna, this earth red, and I want to make sure I don't have too much. So I'm going to put it over here, just have a little bit on the brush, mix it in. That's a little more, that grade made the blue a little more gray than I wanted to, so I'm going to add some more cerulean. I wanted to kind of neutralize that blue a little bit, but not so much. Okay, this is a kind of a big area, so I want to make sure that I have a lot of paint, so I'm not having to stop and remix, because I want to work wet into wet to try to kind of minimize any streaks. Let's make some more. It's hard with this is my little travel kit. All right, let's see how this goes. So I want to work carefully, but also fast enough that I can work wet into wet. And this will help minimize any streaks, which I just don't really want for this. Not the end of the world if it happens, but. And it's really dry in here today because it got really cold the last couple days, and so the heat's going. And so it makes the paint dry faster. Okay, great. And I like these little spots where there's a little bit of water and pigment collecting. All right, what do we want to do next? I'm gonna work some earth red into here. I'm always thinking about that red clay we have in the ground here. Okay. All right. Let's see, what are we gonna do next? I'm gonna start with some burnt umber. That is not burnt umber. What is that? That is another color I put in here. Well, I'll check later. I put it in here so long ago, I forgot what it was. Okay, doesn't matter. It's brown. Let's add that burnt sienna to it. Okay, now that looks like burnt umber. Is that what I want? Add a little more of that dark there. Okay, let's see. So this little red square is still wet. I'm leaving a little white space in between these two shapes so they don't bleed together. Although it could be nice if they did. Let's make that happen. So I'm going to get a little closer and then touch. There we go. It makes me think of roots moving through the ground. All right, we'll just let that do what it does. Okay. I'm going to move up here. Let's take some of this. It's kind of an opaque green. This is a chromium. Let's see. Okay, nice. That's nice and dark. I wanted some contrast with that light blue of the sky. So now we have this darker green. So I wanted to get these shapes that are kind of like trees down to help me figure out what I'm doing with the rest. Nice. I love that green. All right, so now let's do, I'm gonna work over here, let that set up a little bit. I'm gonna use some Viridian. It's really bright, cool green. It's a transparent color. I'm not even gonna mix these. Trying to be careful not to touch the rest of my hand on the other colors in case they're wet, those browns. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to work in that middle shape. And I think, let's see how the sap green looks. It's another transparent green, but much warmer. Oh, shoot, I gotta write this down. Okay. I think that'll do. Actually, I'm gonna mix some more yellow into this. This is a green that already has some yellow pigment mixed into it. What am I gonna use? Let's try that lemon yellow. Okay, now we have this like radioactive green. I love that. Okay. It's a pretty unnatural color. Right now for this tree, it feels like it, but I have seen this color in nature. Okay. Looks like pickle juice. Trying to leave that little white space between the painted shapes. All right, let's bring this shape a little closer to the darker green. Okay. All right. So now, when I use that Viridian green over here, it gave me the idea for this color. I'm going to make a gray. That Viridian is really nice for making a gray with the cool red. So let's bring up some of that Viridian again. Rinse my brush. Let's pick up that alizarin crimson. Mix it in the Viridian, and I want to mix some more and darker. So I'm wetting my brush and making sure I get off excess water so this isn't too watered down because that lightens it. Okay, now we have this color that's more red. So I'm going to wash off the brush, go back into the Viridian, and I'm washing my brush in between just so I don't dirty the pans. Okay, that's too green now. So now I'm going to go back and pick up some red lightly. Is that the color I want? To be careful when you're mixing. So this is not ideal that I've had to go back and forth a bunch of times because the colors tend to get muddy. I think that's okay. There we go. I wanted kind of a greenish gray. Yeah, the more you mix your colors, sometimes the worse they get. So it's better to try to get your mixtures right as quickly as possible. The colors stay fresher. Especially when you're mixing neutrals like this, colors that are already more dull. Right, so we have a nice kind of grayish green in here. It feels either kind of like a rock or like a moss color. Okay, nice. So what am I going to do here? I was originally going to make grass, but I have all this green up here. I'm kind of leaning towards something crazy like a red, and only crazy because I'm thinking of the landscape. And let's see. So maybe let's pull up some of that earth red and mix it with some of that alizarin crimson. That's cool red. I love this color. It feels like a color you might see inside the body. Okay. And that's what I do. When I'm mixing colors, I usually have references, either from nature or from the human body. It's helpful for me to have a point of reference. kind of like a salmon color-ish. All right, does this feel done? Yep, kind of does. Let's see. I'll initial this. And write the year. And there we go.